Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. And it is exactly 9:59 a.m. As I wrap up this morning on news and views on Salam Media, we are going to be taking a listen to Heard on Air, the genocide in Gaza and Lebanon against the strategic madness of the Zionist regime. This was recorded last night by my colleague Inayat Wadi. And if my producer can just enlarge that picture, I can tell you who the guests were on the program. It was Professor Sami Al Arian from Istanbul, Bilal Abdul Karim, and I can't see their designations, unfortunately. The picture hasn't been opened up big enough, so I do apologize for that. And Nidal Sakar. So sadly, I can't give you the names of uh, the institutions that they are from. Professor Sami is a Palestinian academic and political activist. And of course, I can't read the others, it's been cut off. But be that as it may, please do take a listen to that. It's quite a powerful discussion, and you'll have a broader view on what exactly is happening in that part of the world. Thank you for being with me. Take care on the roads. From me till next week, as always, Assalamu alaikum and Khudafiz from Julie Ali.
An important point. He said that all Muslims should side against the enemy. All Muslims, and he used the word should. We all agree. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. All of the Muslims have to come together against the enemy. I am very much for that. But also at the same time, it would be grossly irresponsible. Hear what I'm going to say? It would be grossly irresponsible to ignore the Iranian role in the deaths of 1 million Syrians. I'm going to say that again. To all of a sudden just pretend that that didn't happen and it was just some misunderstanding somehow, that 1 million Syrians were killed and half the population displaced. And now we're going to say that, okay, well, we're going to put all of that aside. That's hard to put aside because what was behind the deaths of 1 million people? 1 million people, that's not 10 or 15 people. So I would love to be wrong. I'm going to tell you up front. I would love to be wrong about Iran. That would make me happy. I don't take any pleasure in seeing 480 projectiles being thrown at the Israelis and no deaths have occurred. That doesn't make me happy. But me as a journalist, and I have to say what's on the ground, we've got to say what's really happening here. And what we're seeing on the ground up until now has not been an effective Iran. That's just the reality of the situation. After your embassy has been bombed, after your leaders have been killed, and their proxy leaders have been killed, and all, I understand that we are in a phase where we're saying now, all right, well, we're sending you a message. But the Israelis have sent multiple messages. And once again, I'm ready to be wrong, Nidal. And Professor Sami, I'm ready to be wrong. I want to be wrong. I really do. I'd like to take you guys' telephone numbers so that I can tell you I was wrong. But until I see that there's actually something on the ground tangible, it's going to be hard for me to see that the entities that teamed up with Bashar al-Assad to kill 1 million Syrians all of a sudden now is really serious about saving Sunni Muslims. So that part I did want to say. And just to finalize it, yes, we've got to come together, guys. We've got to. The Egyptians have spent big amounts of money to build walls and such like that. They've offered no assistance whatsoever except to keep the Palestinians out. I get the logic that they're saying, which is that we don't want them to be displaced so that their land can be stolen, but we don't want them to be killed either. Abdel Fattah Sisi had more than ample opportunity to say to Netanyahu, look, we've got these aid trucks that are here in Egypt. They're coming in to Rafah, and we're going to send tanks in front of them and behind them. If you choose to attack them, then that's up to you. He had plenty of opportunity to do that, and he didn't do it. The only time we saw the mobilization of the Jordanians was to help to shoot down missiles that were going over their airspace. The Saudis are just waiting for all of this to end so that they can go back to the agreement that they were trying to make with the Americans and the Israelis. They wanted a NATO-style agreement wherein they would recognize Israel's right to exist, meaning that the lands which they stole from the Palestinians is recognized by Saudi Arabia as their land, something they have no business doing. But they want an agreement from the Americans that should they ever be attacked, i.e. from Iran or other than them, that the Americans would come to their aid. Good luck with that. But the point of the matter is that you're right. So many of the Muslim countries have abandoned the Palestinian cause. If you go over to the Emiratis are also, they're the first country that opened up, I believe, the Israeli embassy, and are very, very willing to normalize with them. The Bahrainis, if you look at this, and this is an important point here, if you look at the Bahrainis, the Saudis, and the Emiratis, the Houthis were working hard to create a virtual blockade of the Red Sea because half of the foodstuffs that go to that the Israelis consume are imported. So they put together a good blockade and a good effort to support the Palestinian brothers and sisters. But what did the Emiratis and the Bahrainis do? They opened up a land corridor so that those ships could dock in Bahrain and Emirates, and they could go by land through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, on to Haifa, so that business can continue as usual, so that they could circumvent the Houthi blockade. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess. We want to see a lot more from our governments, but so far we haven't seen it. And I am hoping and praying that a mass mobilization of the Muslims can either send a message to the leaders: you either get to work or get out.
Professor Sami, just looking at resistance, and not only Iran, but any form and all forms of resistance at this point in time against this Zionist aggression, what would make it most effective?
Well, I think we need first to agree on our strategic goal. And then after we agree on what the strategic goal is, we can talk about what forms of resistance need to be implemented and used in order to fulfill this strategic objective. I believe our strategic objective should be to dismantle the Zionist structure, to dismantle an ideology that is based on racism, supremacism, expansionism, and so on and so forth. It's trying to replace people with other communities. And if our objective, if our grand strategy is to dismantle the Zionist structures in Palestine, then we need to identify its sources of power, of influence. It's the imperatives that makes it survive and expand and exist. And I have a study, I don't have time to go over it now, in which I identify 12 imperatives, 12 pillars. You can think of it as a house, the Zionist regime as a house that is built on 12 pillars, 12 columns, 12 imperatives. Each one of them gives it some kind of a staying power. Once we identify them, we will be able to know how it could be dismantled. You would find out that Palestinians on their own cannot dismantle the Zionist entity, the Zionist project, the Zionist enterprise, the Zionist regime. It needs the efforts of the whole Ummah. The formula is very simple. The Zionist regime cannot be dismantled without the Palestinians, and it can't be dismantled with the Palestinians alone. Once we identify this and we're able to build a global movement in order to undermine these supremacist, racist, expansionist, aggressive structure, then we'll be able to achieve our goal. Now, in terms of resistance, discounting military, because that's not what I do, and that's not what the overwhelming majority of people do, we need to focus on all forms of resistance, politically, diplomatically, economically, commercially, culturally, academically, in the media, in the legal circles, educationally, even sports, entertainment. Every aspect of resistance must be employed. And it has to be, and our goal here is to impact the Zionist influence, weaken Zionist, or even eliminate it completely in the societies. In other words, we will have two main tasks. The first task is to support the steadfastness and resilience of the Palestinian people so that they stay on their land. Because if they leave, there is no cause, or at least it would be delayed for a long time. So they need to stay. And secondly, to engage the Zionist structures, the Zionist movement, the Zionist ideology, the Zionist friends. You need also to define what Zionism is and what a Zionist is. A Zionist is any person who believes, acknowledges, or accepts the fact that Israel has a sovereign right in Palestine, any part of Palestine. Anybody who believes in this is a Zionist. That could be a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Buddhist, or even atheist, or anyone else. And therefore, all those who support Zionism have put themselves in that camp, and they need to be engaged. Either that they can understand the nature of Zionism and change their attitude and their behavior, or they would have to be engaged in a way that they should not be supporting this Zionist entity, this Zionist regime. And that's basically what I'm talking about here. The Palestinians have been resisting for over a century, but they can only impact this and take it so far. They can keep the struggle alive. They can certainly impact the spread of the Zionist, of this cancer throughout the region. But on their own, they can't do it. Because again, if you look and study these 12 imperatives, you will find that Palestinians may impact 3 or 4 of them, but the overwhelming majority of them, we really have to build this global movement. And everybody is like having a hammer. And then you're chipping away from every column, bit by bit, until it collapses. And it will be replaced by a regime that can truly call for justice, call for self-determination, for independence, for the restoration of rights. I want to just point out that the origin of the problem here is that we had 2 forms or 2 experiences of Jewish communities. The Jews who lived in Europe were persecuted, were basically oppressed by the European societies, European communities. But those who lived under Islam, that's why the Jewish Encyclopedia calls it the golden age of Jews. Those who lived under Islamic communities and societies, they did not suffer the same thing. And the Europeans, the imperialists, wanted to solve 2 problems in one go. They wanted to solve what they called their Jewish problem, which is what they thought were excess of Jews that they hated. That's where anti-Semitism comes from. It was not experienced for the most part in Muslim societies. In fact, in 1492, when Jews and Muslims were kicked out of Islamic Spain, Andalusia, most of them came into the Muslim countries all the way from Morocco until probably Indonesia and beyond.